You're now listening to Boomsies with Dan O'Toole on the Bet Rivers Network.
It's a March break Friday. At least it's March break here in my part of the world. Not sure about yours. I always had an idea. I wish they staggered March breaks. So people aren't all competing like, hey, we wanna go on a trip, and you're all fighting for that select few trips. I'd love to go on a trip. Yeah, maybe Sault Ste. Marie's in the cards. Sault Ste. Marie, March break. Sign me up. Hopefully, you're having fun with the kids. Hopefully you're keeping them fed. Hopefully you know what a good little meal is? French toast. It's so easy. And again, it's one of those meals where it looks like you put in a lot of effort. And here's where the effort looks like it's come in. Get some strawberries. Strawberries, French toast. Amazing. It looks like you're at a fancy restaurant, and it takes you barely any time to make. And it's filling. And it's like kind of dessert, but it's got egg in there. So you're like, something has to be healthy in here. And those strawberries. Little food tip for you. Hey, love doing these interviews on Friday. And this one is very special. A Canadian broadcast legend. For Canadian broadcasters, for Canadian sports broadcasters, if there was a Mount Rushmore, he would be on it. 1,000% he would be on it. And that man is living legend, Jim Van Horne. Usually I say to guests, let's just look at you. Not only do we want to look at you, JVH, but we want to hear you. We want to hear that voice. Do you get that a lot in life? Just talk.
I think the voice is recognized faster than anything else. The voice followed by the mustache.
The voice followed by... Have you written a book before? There's your title.
You know what? That's not a bad idea. The title, that is.
What would the first chapter of your book be about?
Oh, God. That's a very difficult question. There's so much has happened in the 72 and a half years that I've been on this earth to me that I really, honestly, I wouldn't want to...
Yeah, do you start at the current? Do you start in the middle? Do you start at the very beginning? It's a tough one. The first chapter is when you have to grasp a reader's attention immediately.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can't do that, then there's no way you're going to get on anybody's list.
How about, did you ever come close to swearing, or did you ever swear on air?
There were two occasions. The first time I swore on air was my very first week in radio. I was working at CKMP in Midland. I was 19 years old, and we had one of the old RCA boards, which were about 4 feet wide, about 2.5 feet high, and all the buttons were like doorknobs. And to control the volume on them, you had to turn them clockwise to turn up the volume and counterclockwise to turn down the volume. If the volume was up, when you hit the mic switch, you would hear this massive clunk. So you would turn the volume down, and as you turned it up, you would hit the switch at the same time, so there would be no sound. And I was wearing headphones at the time, just like you're wearing now. Well, they weren't quite as elaborate. So they were the old crystal headphones, believe it or not, hard plastic that just fit on the outside of your ears. And the record ended, and I still wasn't used to having a microphone on when the mic was on in the studio. There was no sound because you'd have massive feedback. So the record ends, and I can't remember if the mic is on or not. And I'm going click, 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 click. Can I say the word? Am I allowed to swear on this thing?
Yes. Yeah. We beep it up.
I said, what is wrong with it? And then I realized the record was over.
And you thought your career was over,
Exactly.
probably,
That
too.
was the first thing that flat. Well, it didn't really hit me until about 10 minutes later when my lone listener called in. I mean, keep in mind, this CKMP in Midland, it's 1,000 watts. Nobody listens to it. It was like 7 o'clock at night or something. And the phone rings, and it's an elderly woman. And she said, "Did I just hear a curse word on the air? Did somebody just swear on the air?" And I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I'm unaware of that, but I will certainly look into it. And I will let you know." And I hung up the phone, and I just waited. I thought to myself, next day, that's it. I'm done. Before it even starts, I'm done. But nobody said a word. There was nothing. And then...
So an incident happened. Well, I won't get into my incident where I swore on air, but a gentleman at a radio station I was working at in Fort McMurray came in. I believe he was under the influence. And he went on a rambling tangent in which it was filled with swear words. And then he proceeded to try erase the master tapes, which is like against the law, I think, because you have to have those tapes to turn over to the CRTC or something. So that was the biggest scandal. We're like, he tried to erase the tapes. You can't do that. Did that enter your mind? You're like, I got to erase the tape.
I was too dumb at that. I didn't even realize that the shows were being recorded at that time. So it never. The only thing I worried about was losing my job. That was.
So your first job was in radio. Did you always have pipes? Is that why you got into radio? Did someone say to you, you need to be on the air?
Basically, what I think the reason I got my first job, was because I was dating a girl in Midland who ended up being my first wife, and her father ran the biggest hardware lumber company in the area. He built all the cottages on Georgian Bay and was huge, and he was a big advertiser on the radio station. And I had tried for a year to get a job and couldn't get anything anywhere. I applied across the country, and everybody turned me down. Thanks for your resume. Nothing available. We'll keep your tape on file for future reference. Good luck, blah, blah, blah. And I to this day, I believe he went to the station manager and says, I'm a pretty big advertiser on this radio station, and I think if you don't hire Dave Melnick as your one of your broadcasters, that budget could shrink dramatically.
Wow, nepotism at its finest.
Exactly. So I got my first job doing 6 to midnight, 6 nights a week for $200 a month.
Wow, that's big money.
I was happier than a pig in slop.
So never would you have envisioned, you probably didn't dare to dream as big as being at the first all sports TV station in Canada.
No, not at all. It was, TSN wasn't even on anybody's radar at the time. My goal was to get to 1050 Chum, which at that point was the radio station in Canada and one of the top 5 stations in North America. And that I grew up listening to Chum because I was a Toronto boy, and that's where I wanted to be. And I eventually got there, spent 8 years there.
But you make it onto the desk. Tell us those early days of... See, I didn't get TSN. I always tell this story. I grew up on a farm, so we had an antenna. So when we went to a hotel, that's where I'm like, I finally get to see it. And it was always like a lumberjack challenge on or something. So in the early days when you're doing a show, lead us through that. Were highlights hard to come by? Where you just got what you were sent? Tell us the early days of putting together those shows.
That's first of all, there were 75 people when TSN went on the air. That was the entire staff.
Wow.
We had 2 edit suites, which served as voiceover suite, and there were 2 edit suites, 1 voiceover suite. And the voiceover suite was, we ran a mic cable from the edit machine up over the top of the silencing screen to a hand mic, and we would look through the window at the monitor where the highlights had been cut, and that's the way we would voice them. So it was directly onto the editing machine. We handheld the mic and read the script through the window, and that's how we did all our highlights. Highlights we had, I think, 5 or 6 televisions in the so-called newsroom that our story editors sat at. Rod Smith was one of them. We used to call them flugans at the time because they were flying all the time. And these guys just busted their chops for like $50 a shift or something like that. And they would watch and tape, do the highlights, cut their highlight packs, and then they would call us. And if we had time to voice them, we'd voice them. If not, we'd do them live. As far as scripts were concerned, keep in mind, this was before computers. We were still using typewriters. And we would write the scripts on something called 7-part green, which was a green paper with photostatic paper in between. So as soon as you hit the typewriter, it would go right through to make 7 copies. So you'd write your whole show on the 7-part green, sometimes up to 35 or 40 pages. And after you finished one page, you'd write the number on top, put it aside, face down. And then when the show was finished, you called everybody. The whole newsroom came over. We had a long table that looked like an extended dining room table with the scripts at one end, and everybody would grab a page, fold the perforated end, rip the carbon paper out of the green paper, and then put them face down along until 35 pages were distributed to the commentators, to the director, to the producer, to the PA, and all the rest.
Must have felt like you were putting out a newspaper.
Every day. Every day.
Every day. And so I assume then no teleprompter.
Yeah, we did have teleprompter.
Oh, you did have a teleprompter.
But the teleprompter operator would take the script and tape them together, and he would feed them like an old style washing machine with rollers through the teleprompter. And there was a camera that took a shot from above, and if you weren't careful, it would jam. If it wasn't,
you guys put a show on with like some string and tape.
Literally. And where we were located on Leslie Street, if anybody's familiar with Leslie Street in Toronto, north of Eglinton, where the BMW dealership is, that used to be TSN. That was the original site of TSN. And so we had no security. Anybody could walk into the building at any time. And we had some pretty interesting incidents. Terry Leibel was one of our anchors at the time. There was myself, John Wells, Terry Leibel, and Michael Landsberg. Terry Leibel and I were on the air, and there was an Expos game on that had gone to extra innings, and we had to wait till the game was over before we could go to air because we were televising the game. And all of a sudden, from the back right portion of the studio, some guy walks in with 2 huge grocery bags, and he says, loud as hell, "Did anybody order Chinese food?" And we're on the air. No, yeah, we were on the air. I said, "Did anybody order Chinese food?" And we sort of looked around and quickly shuffled the guy out and got rid of him. And that's what it was like. Roger Nielsen, when we were doing hockey together, Roger Nielsen used to bring his dog to the studio.
Oh yeah, brought him everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. And we were at the studio. There was myself I was hosting. Roger Nielsen was a color commentator, and Andy Van Hellemond was. I'm sorry, it wasn't Andy Van Hellemond. It was Bruce. I forget his name. Unfortunately he's passed. Anyway, the 3 of us were on set, and Roger's dog. I'm watching the monitor, and Roger's dog walks behind the third color commentator, and all you could see was his tail going by. That's what it was like in those days. It was crazy. It was nuts.
It sounds like you could never relax. You must have always, because not that I got complacent doing shows, but it was a well-oiled machine by the time. It sounds like, every single show. Okay, this ship might take on water.
Steve Cooney was one of the guys that he was a reporter during the week, anchor on weekends. And I can remember, and we used to produce our own shows. The guys on the air, the hosts were the producers. So we would determine the lineup, the content, and all the rest of that stuff. Steve Cooney was producing and co-hosting with me on weekends. And I'll never forget, we'd be in the first block of the show, and he's still writing the second block. And that's how far behind he was. He just loved to work by the seat of his pants, by the skin of his teeth, and he would literally in commercial would rip the script and it'd go flying into everybody else, and we'd come back 2 minutes later, whatever it was, and continue with the show. It was nuts. It was nuts.
In the early days, you must have had people saying, "What are you thinking? An all sports channel? It'll never." But then in hindsight, you look back and you're like, well, it is the one thing that can support a 24-hour channel because there's so many leagues, there's so many teams. It just makes perfect sense. But you must have had those naysayers.
Well, ESPN had been on the air, I think, for 5 years. So there was a sort of a template that you could follow. But I'll never forget when I was hired, I was working at a TV station in Calgary with hosting the Flames games. And I got the call to go to TSN, and I gave my notice. And everybody just said, TSN, what are you doing? No, 24-hour sports, not a chance. First time I went to a press conference in Toronto, I had my TSN blazer on, a TSN patch. And I walk in, the guy looked at me, he said, what the is TSN? I thought, well, I think we got a bit of ways to go. And people...
Do you still have that blazer?
Wings for 24 hours a day.
Yeah. Do you still have that blazer?
Actually, that blazer is at the College of Sports Media in a glass case in the Jim Van Horne lounge.
As it should be.
With the original tie. I had two of them. I had two of them. That one is there. The first one that I had is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. In the media section.
You're in the Hall of Fame.
Or it was. I don't know if it's still there. I haven't been there for years. But it was there.
So you mentioned the school that you are instructor at. What do you tell aspiring broadcasters? Because I still get a lot of people questioning, okay, what are the tips you'd give me? 10 years ago, I give them the same tips people gave me. Go to a place you don't know anyone, a small town, learn how to do everything at the radio station. Now, I don't know what to tell them because those jobs that I went and got, there's barely any of those anymore. With social media the way it is, with the jobs in TV going by the wayside, I don't know what to tell them. Can you give me some advice to give young broadcasters?
Well, I think the broadcast scenario is changing so much. You just mentioned, the internet, podcasts, television, radio. There's so much going on that it's almost an era where you have to specialize, where you have to pick your spot and determine what it is you want to do, what do you want to achieve, what you're best at, and then go for it. Sometimes, and a lot of times, the majority of times at CSM, people would come in and everybody wanted to be on the air. Everybody wanted to be the next whoever. And we could tell usually within 5 minutes whether somebody was qualified to be on the air or had the type of personality you needed to be on the air. And, we would encourage people to do what they do best. And a lot of them eventually either became directors or producers or editors or camera people. And a lot of them did go on to have success. So I think it's a really specialized area now. You have to know in your head what it is you want and almost be blind, just have blinders on to make sure that you get it. And I still agree with you that if you can go to a smaller market, it's much better because, to be honest with you, TSN isn't going to hire somebody or Sportsnet or anybody else out of, Elbow, Saskatchewan. It's just not going to happen. They want experience and they want somebody with a little bit of personality, unless you're an athlete.
I always compared it to becoming a jumbo, like a pilot for Air Canada. You don't just fly the jumbo jet. Yep. You got to bank all your hours. Yep. You got to start on the Cessna.
Exactly.
Then you go to the plane bigger than that. So you just got to put in your hours. But it's accumulating those hours now because not everyone can just become like a Steve Dangle or be watching a game and have people watch them. I just don't know. I feel so bad where I can't give the proper advice.
Yeah, it's very difficult. And yet the people that usually go into those programs, whether it was CSM or Ryerson or Seneca, wherever it is, they have this idea, this dream, this fantasy that they're going to be the next big star in sports television. And it doesn't always work out, and it's very difficult to paint the picture. I always used to tell, I was brutally honest with my students and told them, you're not here to get a participation badge. You're here to learn, and what we're teaching you is practical stuff that you're going to learn, that you're going to use on the job. We're not going to talk theory. You're going to get your hands dirty. You're going to learn to edit. You're going to learn to shoot, to operate a camera. You're going to learn to do roundtable discussions. You're going to learn radio. You're going to learn television, how to host, how to produce, how to direct, how to be a production assistant. You're going to learn everything. We're not just going to talk about it. You are going to do it. And we drove it into them for 2 years. And I was a tough taskmaster. I really pushed them hard.
Do you give the piece of advice, or not advice, the over-the-head truth that I got at Algonquin College in Ottawa? One of our instructors, I took the radio broadcast course there. One of the first days, he looks at all of us, he's like, most of you in this room, about over 90%, are going to make no money in this industry, ever. The most you'll ever make is maybe $15,000 a year. And people are just like, is this a pep talk? Do you hit them with that?
No.
Truth?
No, what I would always say to them, excuse me, to start things off was, there's always going to be room for exceptional broadcasters. It's up to you to become that exceptional broadcaster. We're going to give you the tools. We're going to open the door, but you have to walk through it. And if you walk through it and continue to work hard and dedicate yourself to the craft that you're about to learn, success will come. And with success comes the money.
Well, that's the pep talk I needed. Everyone, I think half the class didn't even show up the next day. They're like, what's the point? But if you had said that, so you said what my instructor said, you just said it way better.
Yeah. There's no secret to success. You and I both know that, Dan. There is absolutely no secret to success. The formula is hard work. If you go into broadcasting, whether it's news, weather, sports, reporting, whatever it is, it's not a job. It's your life. It is a lifestyle, and it consumes you totally. Like, you have to give yourself 100% to your craft. And if you're not willing to do that, forget it. If you're supposed to be on the air at 9:00, you better be ready to go, because they're not going to wait for you until you show up. It's going to go at 9:00, whether you're there or not. And if you're not there, chances are you won't get another chance to do it.
Oh yeah, Onright always says to aspiring broadcasters, or what he was told, well, if you like weekends and being with your family at night, this isn't the industry for you.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what it's like. You don't have a life. If like going out to dinner, going to concerts, scratch that from your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. First year at TSN, I was probably at the office, oh boy, probably 16 hours a day. Just doing everything. I would come in for the morning meeting, for the editorial meeting. I would stay. I would do the early show. Then I'd run to the next studio to host That's Hockey. Then I would stay in that studio to host a hockey game. And then if somebody was sick, I'd stay to do the late show as well. It was just nonstop. And then there was reporting on top of that. So it was, learning by fire. Talk about learning by fire. It was a heavy experience, but it was fun.
I wish they had cameras rolling.
I loved it.
I'd like to see the 30 for 30 on that, like the early days. I'd watch that. I'd watch the hell out of that.
Oh, it was marvelous. Really probably one of the best times of my broadcast career were the early days of TSN.
Mr. Jim Van Horne, before we get into rapid fire, I wanted to check on your health because on my last, I think you were maybe one of our last guests before COVID hit.
I think you're right.
At the old network. And you came on to talk about your battle with cancer. And how's that going?
It's good. I'm healthy. I'm
amazing.
5 years cancer-free.
Yes.
I go for my checkups every 6 months, and everything is good.
Boomsies.
For an old fart, I'm doing okay.
And tips on people on how to stay on top of things.
If you see anything unusual, in my case, it was bladder cancer. If the thing with bladder cancer, if you see red, go see your doctor, because that's probably going to be one of the very first things you're going to see is blood in your urine. Once you see that, don't be a tough guy. and it's prevalent in men, go see your doctor and get it checked out. Chances are it's just an infection of some kind, but if it is cancer, bladder cancer, and if it's caught early, it can be dealt with. And mine was. I was very, very lucky. Very lucky. Don't ignore it. No matter what it is, you feel if there's a strange mole or a lump on your body that you haven't seen in a while, have it checked out. It could be, some kind of skin cancer, anything like that. Headaches, get yourself checked out. Sore back, get yourself checked out. There's so many different things that we think that we're on top of, when it comes to that type of thing, when it comes to cancer. But, you may have, I've known friends that have had headaches and turns out to be brain cancer, and 6 months later they're dead because they ignored the headaches.
Oh my God.
So just check it out.
Don't ignore the signs.
Don't be afraid.
Okay, here we go. Rapid fire. One of these players, you get them all in their prime. You're handed the keys to a new NHL franchise. Who do you start the franchise and build around? Gretzky, McDavid, or Crosby?
I would say Crosby.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, pancakes.
What?
Yep.
Waffles holds the syrup. Pancakes just get soggy.
I soak my pancakes.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Ability to fly or be invisible?
I think the ability to fly.
Yeah, you never have to pay for a plane ticket again. Best soda, or if you call it pop?
Best soda pop would be Grape Crush.
Ooh, I had one the other day.
Great
favorite
with fish
smell.
and chips.
Favorite smell?
Favorite smell?
Yeah.
Steak on the barbecue.
Ooh, that is a good one. Last show you binge watched?
Justified.
Favorite broadcast moment?
Calling the 2000 gold medal tennis match in Sydney, Australia, where Team Canada upset the heavily favored Australians for the gold medal. I called that on my own. There were 10,000 people in the stands. I think 9,950 were cheering for Australia. The others were cheering for Canada, and I called that. They actually interrupted the national news to carry that broadcast live. And it was, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Daniel Nestor and Sebastian Leroux.
Nothing beats the Olympics. Olympic moments are the
they're
best.
Fabulous.
And finally, best mustache care tip.
Keep it trimmed. And don't dye
It's
it.
easy.
Don't
No.
color it. I mean, you got it.
No waxes or anything?
Nah.
No oils?
Nah,
Okay.
nada.
Jim Van Horne, this has been an absolute pleasure. Always looked up to you growing. Hey, did you ever have because I watched Sportsline growing up with Jim Taddy and Mark Hepsher. Did you guys have because Toronto is the epicenter of all things sports, and that was a big show when it was in its prime. Did you guys have any battles
Nah.
where everyone got along?
No. They weren't really a factor as far as we were concerned. I think one of the interesting aspects was later on when Mark Hepsher ended up doing the early show at Sportsnet, and I was doing the early show at TSN, and they asked him what he hoped to achieve, and he was, saying, "Oh, I want to kill TSN, I want to kill Van Horne, la 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 la." And 6 months later, he was out. So, and that,
I never even knew he was there. I never knew he was there.
Never worried about that kind of stuff. I just did my
that's
thing. It was fun.
Exactly.
Just
Keep your side of the street clean. That's all you got to do.
It's never
Thanks,
one
my friend.
for the trappings of celebrity and all that stuff. It's just give me a break.
Exactly. Live your own life. Ignore all the other.
Bingo.
Thanks, my friend.
Anytime, Dan. You stay healthy and be safe.
That made my day. JVH. Cancer free. Looking like $1 million. Sounding like $1,000. Oh no, that would. Sorry. Sorry. Looking like $1 million. Sounding like $2 million. Got my math right there. Math, not my strong suit. Had to go to summer school for grade 10 math. And then when you make it to summer school, if you show up every day, I don't think I did any better. They're just like, hey, you showed up. I'm going to pass you. Just get out of here. Hope you have a great weekend. Let's finish this March break in style. Let's go out with a bang. Let's end it. Good. High energy. Let's go, baby. See ya.
Welcome to Boomsies with Dan O'Toole. Live from Horne Knows in the heart of Ontario. Oh, baby, Boomsies.
Thanks for listening to Boomsies.